He storms into the kitchen, shoulders squared as though carrying the weight of generations behind him. His voice rises sharp and commanding. "I'm the man of this house. What I say goes." The knife pauses mid-slice in her hand. She looks up slowly, her eyes calm, almost amused. One eyebrow arches as if she's been waiting for this exact moment. Her reply is steady, unhurried. And what exactly does that mean to me in 2025? The silence that follows is not just silence, it is collapse. It is the soundless crumble of an old world order, one that his grandfather wielded without question, his father leaned on without thought, and he himself assumed would protect him forever. That silence echoes louder than any scream. For in that instant he realizes something brutal yet undeniable. The magic phrase passed down through bloodlines has lost its power. This isn't merely a couple's quarrel. This is the embodiment of what I call authority, collapse, the systematic breakdown of traditional gender-based power structures. For centuries, men carried a shield of entitlement. They believed their gender alone conferred the right to lead command and be obeyed. It was not only accepted, it was expected. The sentence, "because I'm the man," once had the force of law within four walls and outside of them too. But today, those words are as hollow as an abandoned church bell. They belong to the relics of another era alongside flip phones and dial-up internet. Women of today are not impressed by chromosomes. They are not persuaded by lineage or soothed by tradition. What they evaluate, what they measure relentlessly, is competence. Does this man truly know what he's doing? Can his decisions withstand the test of reality? Will following his lead bring safety, growth, or ruin? This change has not been subtle, it has been seismic. Millions of men now find themselves standing on the ruins of promises made to them since boyhood. They were taught that authority was their inheritance, only to discover it was alone one that has now come due. The frustration, the anger, the confusion, they all stem from this betrayal. What worked for their fathers no longer works for them, and so begins the unraveling. The authority collapse is not just a relationship phenomenon, it's a cultural revolution. It began when women earned economic independence, when classrooms opened wider and diplomas were no longer chained to male hands, when laws gave women not only protection but autonomy. Each victory chipped away at the foundation of unquestioned male authority. Psychologically, imagine this shift as a battlefield. On one side, the old soldiers of tradition armored in entitlement, swinging swords forged from gender. On the other, a rising army of women armed not with weapons, but with education, paychecks, and the courage to walk away from dependency. The clash was inevitable, and the outcome is what we see today. Men bewildered in kitchens, offices, and bedrooms, demanding to be obeyed, only to find their words evaporate into thin air. But here is the haunting truth. This collapse is neither good nor bad, it simply is. Just as the Industrial Revolution shattered agrarian hierarchies, the gender revolution shattered domestic ones. Resistance only deepens the wound. Adaptation, however, offers survival and even thriving. This is the stage we find ourselves on now. Authority once assumed must now be earned. Leadership once granted at birth must now be proven in action. It is the death of the old phrase, "because I said so," and the birth of something far more demanding, "show me why I should follow." And as uncomfortable as this may feel for men clinging to the old shield, it presents an extraordinary opportunity. For never before has leadership been stripped so bare of illusion, leaving only competence, authenticity, and character to decide its worth. The authority collapse did not happen overnight. It was not a sudden explosion, but a slow, relentless erosion, like a cliff face eaten away by waves that never stop hitting. For centuries, men stood on a foundation built not of personal competence, but of systemic privilege. Women were bound to dependency, their survival tethered to a man's provision, their voice silenced by laws, customs, and social stigma. Then the world shifted. The cracks began with education. Women entered classrooms once barred to them, and knowledge gave them not just literacy, but vision. Vision of what life could be without chains. Soon, economic independence followed. Paychecks of their own bank accounts in their names, no longer coins handed down as allowance, but money earned by skill. Finally, legal rights arrived, the right to vote, to own property, to divorce, to live without permission. Each victory was a hammer striking at the old foundation until the structure of automatic male authority buckled. And with it, an unspoken bargain dissolved the idea that women needed men to survive. This is where the competence arms race was born. Imagine it: a woman who once needed a man for financial security now runs her own business. A woman who once relied on her husband's decisions now makes investment choices more precise than his. A woman who once had to accept her fate can now leave and start anew without permission. For such a woman, why would the words "follow me" carry any weight unless the man demonstrates actual superior value? This shift is not just practical, it is psychological. Men raised under the old promise that manhood equals leadership find themselves unprepared for a world where leadership must be earned. They arrive at the starting line believing they've already won the race, only to see women sprinting past them with discipline and independence. And here is the paradox. The authority collapse stripped men of privilege but gave them something far more demanding: accountability. Today, being male is no longer a passport to respect. It is merely the entry ticket. What determines whether a man thrives or collapses is not his gender, but his ability to prove competence, authenticity, and emotional intelligence. Think of relationships now as negotiations between equals rather than commands issued from a throne. A modern woman is not impressed by declarations of power, she is scanning for evidence. Does this man make better decisions than I can make alone? Can he navigate challenges with wisdom and strength? Does his presence add value to my life, or does it subtract from it? The answers to these questions decide whether she stays, whether she follows, or whether she walks away. For many men, this reality feels like betrayal. But betrayal is not the right word because nothing was stolen. What happened was an unveiling. The illusion of automatic authority was stripped away, leaving men face to face with the truth. Leadership is no longer granted, it must be demonstrated. And this truth does not only transform marriages and dating, it reshapes society. In boardrooms, offices, politics, and even friendships, authority rooted in position collapses if it lacks competence. The father at the dinner table, the boss at the conference room, the politician behind the podium all face the same unrelenting demand: prove your worth or lose your voice. The authority collapse, then, is not the end of leadership, it is the beginning of its reinvention. Men who adapt, who learn, who rise to this new challenge discover something powerful when leadership is freely given to you because you've proven value. It is far stronger, far more enduring than authority that was demanded out of fear or tradition. But to survive this new world, men must first accept a sobering reality: the shield of tradition is gone, and it will not return. For centuries, men did not need to justify their authority. They were protected by something I call the tradition shield. This shield was invisible but powerful, woven from culture, religion, and unspoken rules passed from father to son. It meant that questioning a man's leadership was taboo, almost unthinkable. A wife who dared to challenge her husband risked not only his wrath, but the judgment of the entire community. Obedience was painted as virtue and compliance as love. But shields once cracked do not mend themselves. The erosion of the tradition shield began quietly. Women who gained education and work stepped into public spaces once monopolized by men. They earned wages, controlled property, and started to see themselves as full actors in society rather than silent dependents. At the same time, cultural narratives shifted. Novels, films, and media began portraying women not just as caretakers, but as leaders, rebels, and visionaries. The more women saw themselves reflected in power, the less convincing the old shield became. Psychologically, this collapse was monumental. The shield had been more than cultural, it was emotional. For men, it offered a blanket of certainty. I don't have to prove I'm a leader. Tradition proves it for me. For women, it was a cage. Even if he is incompetent, tradition says, I must follow. When the shield shattered, both sides were thrust into unfamiliar territory. Today, women no longer feel bound by inherited scripts. They are not only allowed to question male authority, they are encouraged to. In fact, to remain silent in the face of incompetence is often seen as weakness, not loyalty. The cultural script has flipped. Consider the psychology here. The shield worked because it silenced doubt. When tradition is unquestionable, there is no need for evidence. But remove that barrier and suddenly everything is open to scrutiny. A man cannot simply say, because I'm your husband or because I'm the boss. The new demand is relentless. Show me why. And here lies the discomfort. Many men still carry the memory of that shield like soldiers clutching a broken sword. They try to wield it in arguments, shouting old phrases that once commanded silence. I'm older, I'm stronger, I'm the provider. But in the modern world, those phrases are empty incantations. Instead of obedience, they invite defiance. Instead of respect, they provoke resentment. The collapse of the tradition shield also reshaped family structures. Where once authority flowed downward like a pyramid, households today function more like networks, shared decision-making, negotiations, compromises. This change has bred friction. Many men feel stripped of honor, while many women feel they are finally breathing free air. Culturally, we are in a transition period. Some communities still cling fiercely to the shield, trying to weld its broken pieces back together. Others have abandoned it entirely, embracing equality not as a threat but as a chance to redefine partnership. The tension between these two worlds explains much of the confusion in modern relationships. But make no mistake, the shield is not coming back. Tradition can provide comfort, but it cannot stop progress. Once women experienced independence, there was no unseeing it, no unlearning it. The genie is out of the bottle, and no force of nostalgia can push it back in. And so we arrive at a crossroads. Without the shield, men must rely on something far more fragile, far more personal, their own competence. Authority is no longer assumed. It is tested every day in every choice, in every interaction. The tradition shield has fallen. What replaces it is not a void but a challenge, a demand for authenticity, for proof, for leadership that is chosen rather than imposed. When the tradition shield shattered, something new rose in its place, a demand as sharp as steel and as unyielding as time. I call it the competence imperative. The rule is simple but merciless. If you want someone to follow your lead, you must be demonstrably better at leading than they are. Not once, not in theory, but consistently across time and circumstance. Gender no longer buys you authority. Competence is now the only currency. This imperative creates what I call the excellence requirement. In the past, it was enough for a man to be good at one thing: bringing home a paycheck, fixing the car, handling the finances. Those single skills could justify his dominance. But in the modern landscape, being excellent in one domain while failing in others is no longer enough. Women evaluate leadership as a total competence package. A man who is brilliant at business but emotionally unavailable. A provider who cannot communicate, a protector who cannot control his own anger. These are not leaders in the eyes of today's women. The standard has risen. Competence must stretch across emotional intelligence, decision-making, stability, vision, and practical life management. And the pressure doesn't stop there. The competence imperative also carries a continuous improvement requirement. Yesterday's skills are today's baseline. The degree you earned 10 years ago, the promotion you bragged about last year, the single achievement you wave like a flag, none of these hold their glow for long. Why? Because women themselves are evolving. They are advancing in education and career and self-mastery. What once impressed them is now the minimum. Think of it like technology. The first smartphone felt like magic. Today, if your phone can't connect to 5G, run dozens of apps, and take crystal clear photos, it's obsolete. Leadership works the same way. Yesterday's impressive husband or boyfriend becomes today's bare minimum, easily replaceable. And here lies the psychological sting for many men. Under the old system, their position guaranteed respect. Under the new system, their worth is under constant audit. Competence is no longer proven once it must be proven repeatedly in every moment. Women, too, have developed what I call the authenticity radar. They can detect posturing, bravado, or inflated self-claims with uncanny precision. A man who pretends at leadership but lacks depth is exposed quickly. This is why traditional masculine posturing, raising your voice, puffing your chest, asserting dominance, rings hollow. It doesn't persuade, it repels. And this raises a terrifying reality. Many men stripped of tradition's shield discover that their actual competence is far lower than they imagined. Their marriages falter, their careers stall, their friendships weaken, not because the world suddenly conspired against them, but because the world finally demanded evidence. But this isn't just a story of loss. It is also a story of opportunity. The competence imperative, though ruthless, offers a path to genuine leadership. A man who builds skills, cultivates wisdom, and develops emotional intelligence finds that women don't merely tolerate his leadership, they seek it, they want it, because following him makes life better. This is the essence of the new world: competence, not chromosomes. Proof, not position. Leadership that is chosen freely, not demanded by birthright. And for men willing to rise to this standard, there has never been a more powerful form of authority, because it is authority that cannot be revoked by changing traditions. It is earned real and resilient. The competence imperative introduced a brutal standard, but women did not stop there. Over time, they developed something even sharper, a kind of X-ray vision for leadership. I call it the authenticity filter. This filter is merciless. It strips away appearances, exposes false confidence, and separates real competence from performance. A man can wear the right suit, project confidence, even rehearse the language of leadership, but the moment his decisions falter, the filter pierces through. Women see not only what a man presents, but what lies beneath: his consistency, his emotional stability, his ability to deliver results. And here is the truth. Many men find unbearable. The authenticity filter cannot be tricked for long. You may impress at first with charisma, bravado, or borrowed lines of wisdom. But when pressure mounts, when finances tighten, when crises erupt, when emotions run high, your mask will crack. And in that fracture, the truth is revealed. Women are not fooled by performance. They are compelled by proof. This is where the merit authenticity matrix comes in. Unlike the tradition shield, which guaranteed obedience without question, the matrix demands demonstrated value. Authority is no longer claimed, it must be earned, documented, and renewed. The matrix works on a principle as old as human trust people follow when they see genuine benefit in following. That means leadership is not about demanding compliance, but about consistently creating outcomes that are better than what followers could achieve alone. In modern relationships, that translates into simple but profound questions. Does his presence make my life calmer or more chaotic? Does he bring solutions or more problems? Do I feel stronger beside him or weaker? Only when the answers lean toward growth and safety does leadership survive. History has shown us countless examples. Charismatic leaders, figures like Martin Luther King Jr. or Nelson Mandela, commanded loyalty not through inherited authority, but through visible evidence of vision, wisdom, and sacrifice. On the other hand, authoritarian rulers who demanded respect without proving value eventually faced rebellion. The principle is universal: leadership by merit endures. Leadership by entitlement crumbles. The psychological weight of the merit authenticity matrix is immense for men raised on tradition. Under the old system, authority was static. You had it by virtue of gender. Under the new system, authority is dynamic. You hold it only so long as you can justify it. One mistake does not doom you, but repeated incompetence, arrogance, or dishonesty erodes trust faster than ever before. And there is no hiding in the age of transparency. Women today are not only educated, they are trained by culture, by media, by experience to evaluate leadership with precision. They expect consistency. They demand evidence. They apply the authenticity filter, instinctively scanning for cracks, testing claims against reality. For men, this can feel exhausting. A constant performance review, an endless trial where the verdict is never final. But here lies the paradox. Those who truly are competent, authentic, and committed need not fear the filter. They are not actors on a stage, they are leaders in truth. Their consistency under pressure, their humility in learning, their resilience in difficulty, these qualities shine through the filter and invite loyalty that cannot be forced. The matrix also reshapes intimacy itself. In the past, love could mask incompetence and tradition could cover weakness. Today, love often deepens only when competence is demonstrated. Attraction is no longer just about charm or appearance, it is about trust earned through repeated evidence. A woman who sees her partner navigate life with clarity and strength feels not only respect but safety, and safety is the soil in which deep attachment grows. This is the transformation of modern authority, from entitlement to evidence, from posture to proof. Men who adapt discover that authentic leadership, though harder to earn, is infinitely more rewarding. Because loyalty chosen is stronger than loyalty forced. If the merit authenticity matrix defines why leadership must be earned, the command wisdom principle explains how it must be exercised. Leadership today is not about volume or position. It is about discernment, about issuing guidance in ways that others both can and want to follow. Think of a commander on a battlefield. He does not shout random orders into chaos. He studies his soldiers' strengths, their exhaustion, the terrain, the timing of the enemy's moves. His commands are not arbitrary. They are precise, rooted in understanding. The same principle applies in modern relationships and organizations. Authority survives only when it is paired with wisdom. The command wisdom principle is built on 4 pillars. 1. Capability assessment. An effective leader must understand the actual abilities of those he hopes to lead. A man who demands from his partner what she cannot realistically give is not leading. He is setting her up for failure. The same applies at work. A boss who assigns impossible tasks breeds resentment, not respect. True leadership means knowing what is possible, then pushing just enough to inspire growth without crushing spirit. 2. Willingness evaluation. Beyond skill, there is will. A partner may have the capacity but not the emotional energy. A team member may have the knowledge but not the motivation. The wise leader recognizes the state of those he leads and adjusts accordingly. To ignore willingness is to invite rebellion. 3. Timing intelligence. Not every request belongs to every moment. Timing can make the difference between compliance and defiance. The man who insists on discussing finances when his partner is exhausted from work undermines his own message. The manager who pushes a new initiative during a crisis blinds himself to reality. Leadership is not only about what to say, it is about when to say it. 4. Context. Sensitivity. Life is not static. Circumstances change, emotions fluctuate, environments shift. The leader who cannot adapt, who clings rigidly to a single method, soon loses relevance. Command wisdom requires agility, the ability to sense the context and tailor decisions accordingly. Psychologically, the command wisdom principle addresses a common modern failure: men who succeed in rigid hierarchies but falter in voluntary relationships. At work, authority may be backed by policy contracts or fear of losing income. At home, none of these tools apply. A woman is not obligated to stay. Authority in intimacy cannot be enforced. It must be inspired. This is why so many men find themselves baffled. They are respected at the office but dismissed at home. At work, they issue orders with the shield of structure. At home, their words fall flat because structure cannot replace wisdom. And here is the irony. The very skills that make leadership succeed in voluntary settings, listening, timing, empathy, adaptability, are the same skills many men were never taught to value. The old model glorified command as domination. The new model demands command as wisdom. History is full of examples of leaders who embodied this principle. Abraham Lincoln, for instance, was not the loudest or most forceful voice in the room. His genius was timing and sensitivity, knowing when to push, when to pause, and when to compromise. His leadership survived not because he demanded obedience, but because he commanded with wisdom. In relationships, the same truth applies. A man who recognizes his partner's stress and waits to address conflict until the right moment shows wisdom. A father who senses his child's readiness before teaching a lesson exercises discernment. A leader who respects timing and context creates what I call the natural compliance effect. People follow not because they are forced, but because the request feels reasonable, humane, and aligned with reality. This is the essence of the command wisdom principle. Authority divorced from wisdom becomes tyranny. Authority fused with wisdom becomes influence. And in the modern world, influence, not force, is the only path to lasting leadership. Perhaps the most dangerous illusion men carry into the modern world is what I call the position authority fallacy. It is the belief that a title, a role, or even simply one's gender automatically grants the right to lead. This fallacy whispers insidiously, "I'm the father, therefore I am in charge. I'm the boss, therefore you must obey. I'm the man, therefore I get the final say." For centuries, this illusion held sway. It worked because tradition and culture reinforced it, creating entire systems where titles carried unquestionable power. But in today's world, where authority is voluntary, not enforced, the position authority fallacy is a curse disguised as privilege. It produces what I call the entitlement assumption. Men step into relationships or workplaces expecting deference, believing their position alone should earn respect. Yet when that respect does not materialize, frustration grows. Instead of questioning their own competence, they double down, demanding recognition that reality refuses to grant. This entitlement then breeds the reminder syndrome. You've seen it before. The man who constantly repeats, "I'm the one in charge here." The boss who says, "Don't forget, I'm your superior." The husband who insists, "Because I'm the man, that's why." But here is the cruel truth. If you have to keep reminding people you're in charge, you are not truly in charge. Real authority is recognized, not announced. And the more these reminders are forced, the more they trigger what I call the resentment effect. When authority is demanded without evidence of competence, followers comply reluctantly, if at all. Inside, resentment festers. They may obey outwardly, but quietly they undermine, resist, or simply walk away. In relationships, this resentment erodes intimacy. In organizations, it sabotages loyalty. The fallacy also exposes what I call the weakness revelation problem. When the only justification for leadership is position, rather than skill, wisdom, or authenticity, it reveals the leader's incompetence. A man who leans solely on his title is in essence admitting, "I have no other proof of my value." And once this weakness is exposed, respect evaporates. The position authority fallacy is particularly destructive in modern relationships. Imagine a marriage framed not as partnership, but as hierarchy. The man demands compliance not because he demonstrates leadership, but because tradition once granted it to him. This structure no longer functions. Women today will not bend to authority rooted in nothing but gender. They either rebel or detach, leaving the man bewildered, wondering why his declarations no longer carry weight. Psychologically, this fallacy is seductive because it offers men an illusion of safety. Titles, roles, and identities create a mask. I am secure because my position secures me. But masks always crack. When stripped away, the truth emerges: leadership without competence is hollow. Contrast this with authentic leadership. A man who leads through demonstrated value never needs to shout about his role. His presence speaks for itself. His decisions create results. His consistency inspires loyalty. The more he proves his worth, the less he needs to declare it. History provides stark lessons. Authoritarian rulers who clung to titles, kings, dictators, CEOs, found their reigns collapsing when competence failed. Meanwhile, leaders who built legitimacy on trust and demonstrated value, figures like Marcus Aurelius, or even modern examples like respected entrepreneurs and reformers, left legacies that survived their positions. The position. Authority fallacy, then, is not merely outdated, it is toxic. It poisons relationships, corrodes respect, and undermines true influence. To cling to it is to cling to a mirage. The modern reality is clear: titles, roles, and identities no longer guarantee authority. They provide only an opportunity, an opening to prove leadership. The rest must be earned day by day, decision by decision. If the position authority fallacy reveals how leadership fails, the hearts and minds strategy reveals how it can truly succeed. In this new era, authority cannot be demanded, it must be inspired. Compliance cannot be forced, it must be volunteered. And the key to inspiring that voluntary compliance lies in winning not just the mind's logic, but the heart's trust. At its core, the hearts and minds strategy is about demonstrated benefit. Leaders show, not tell, why following them creates a better outcome than going alone. Think of it like a contract written in invisible ink. Every choice, every action, every display of competence either strengthens or weakens the willingness of others to follow. The strategy unfolds in several dimensions. 1. The benefit demonstration method. Leadership is persuasive when it proves itself useful. A man who handles crises calmly, solves problems effectively, or navigates life with foresight shows his partner that compliance with his direction leads to smoother outcomes. The same applies at work. Employees willingly follow leaders whose decisions generate growth rather than chaos. The benefit is visible, undeniable, and compelling. 2. The emotional investment component. People do not follow leaders who treat them as tools. They follow those who treat them as partners, as lives worthy of care. A man who demonstrates genuine concern for his partner's well-being, listening when she is overwhelmed, supporting her ambitions, protecting her vulnerabilities, builds trust far deeper than any demand for obedience could achieve. Emotional investment is not weakness, it is the foundation of loyalty. 3. The competence exhibition process. True leaders exhibit competence not once but repeatedly. They show consistency in judgment, reliability under stress, and adaptability in changing circumstances. When others witness this competence in action, they naturally lean into guidance rather than resist it. It is the difference between a pilot confidently navigating turbulence and a pilot panicking at the controls. In one case, passengers relax. In the other, they prepare for disaster. 4. The respect-reciprocity principle. Respect is not unilateral. Leaders who treat others with genuine respect, valuing their input, acknowledging their worth, honoring their autonomy, invite reciprocal respect. When respect flows both ways, compliance ceases to feel like subordination. It feels like partnership. Psychologically, the hearts and minds strategy transforms the very nature of authority. Instead of being a cage that restricts it, becomes a bridge that connects. People follow not out of fear, but out of recognition. My life is better when I align with this person's direction. Consider history's great examples. Charismatic leaders, whether Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, or even figures from military history like Alexander the Great, won battles not merely with weapons but with loyalty born from hearts and minds. Their followers endured hardships, even risked death because they believed in the value and vision their leaders provided. Contrast this with authoritarian rulers who ruled by fear. Their reigns collapsed the moment fear loosened its grip. In intimate relationships, the contrast is equally stark. A man who rules with demands breeds resentment. A man who leads with care, competence, and respect cultivates devotion. The difference is not subtle, it is seismic. One creates a hierarchy brittle and fragile, the other creates a bond resilient and enduring. And here lies the brilliance of the hearts and minds strategy. It transforms leadership from a struggle for control into a magnet of attraction. The leader does not chase obedience. Obedience comes willingly, even eagerly. Followers become not reluctant subjects, but enthusiastic allies. This is the kind of leadership modern women respond to, not the thundering command of, "because I said so," but the steady demonstration of, "because with me, life is better." If the hearts and minds strategy shows the path to inspired leadership, then the battlefield on which it plays out is what I call the modern competence arms race. This is no ordinary competition. It is relentless, escalating, and unforgiving. Women's independence, education, and social mobility have raised the bar so high that yesterday's impressive man is today's bare minimum. Think of it like climbing an endless mountain. Each generation of men once thought they stood at the summit only to discover that women's progress raised the peak higher. A college degree once set a man apart. Today, it is standard. A stable paycheck once secured admiration. Now, it is merely the baseline. A man must continually sharpen, adapt, and expand his competence or risk irrelevance. This arms race operates through what I call the rising standards effect. A woman who manages her own finances, travels alone, and thrives in her career will not be swayed by a man who offers only the stability she already possesses. To impress her, to lead her, he must bring something more: wisdom, foresight, emotional grounding. The very skills that tradition once dismissed as soft have now become the most critical. And that is where the emotional intelligence imperative enters the stage. In this new landscape, technical skills and financial provision are not enough. Leadership now requires psychological literacy, the ability to understand emotions, motivations, and the invisible currents that shape human behavior. This imperative has several layers. 1. The psychological literacy requirement. Modern leaders must read more than situations. They must read people. They must understand how fear drives avoidance, how pride resists correction, how love craves recognition. Without this literacy, commands fall flat and influence evaporates. 2. The empathy development component. Empathy is no longer optional. A man who cannot step into his partner's perspective, who cannot feel the weight of her struggles, cannot inspire her trust. Empathy does not weaken leadership, it humanizes it. And in a voluntary world, humanity is the strongest currency. 3. The communication mastery element. Leadership collapses when words confuse or alienate. Men who master communication, who know how to express needs without aggression, how to frame direction as collaboration, how to use tone as much as language command, not through volume, but through clarity. 4. The conflict resolution. Capability. In the old world, conflict could be suppressed with silence or fear. In the new world, conflict is a test of competence. The man who navigates disagreements with calm fairness and emotional control proves his value. The man who resorts to shouting or withdrawal reveals his weakness. The emotional intelligence imperative is not just about romance, it defines all human interaction. Leaders in business, politics, and communities who fail to grasp it lose relevance quickly. Those who embody it gain an edge sharper than any credential. Consider this paradox: a man with wealth but no empathy often loses to a man with modest means but emotional depth. Why? Because people, especially women, seek not just providers but partners. Emotional intelligence makes relationships feel alive, safe, and worth following. Psychologically, this shift unsettles many men. They were taught that stoicism, silence, and authority were marks of strength. Yet in today's arms race, those very traits can signal weakness. What once inspired compliance now creates distance. Meanwhile, the men once dismissed as too sensitive or too thoughtful often outperform because they understand that leadership is not domination, it is connection. And so the race continues. Every step women take in competence pushes men to refine their own. It is not a war but a dance, one where the tempo grows faster, the steps more complex. Those who refuse to learn stumble. Those who adapt discover that the dance itself is exhilarating. This is the new battlefield, not brawn versus brawn, not gender versus gender, but competence versus competence, heart against heart, wisdom against ignorance. If the modern competence arms race defines the present, the future lies in what I call the partnership evolution model. Because true leadership in relationships does not end with one person forever directing and the other forever following. Instead, the ultimate form of authority is one that matures into partnership, a collaboration where both parties bring their strengths and leadership rotates as life demands. This model begins with a development orientation. A secure leader does not cling to dominance. He invests in his partner's growth, teaching, supporting, encouraging, because he understands that her strength does not diminish his. It multiplies their shared power. Instead of fearing her competence, he helps cultivate it. Then comes the graduated autonomy process. As his partner demonstrates judgment and capability, he gradually shares decision-making. What begins as guidance evolves into collaboration. This prevents two extremes, the suffocation of micromanagement and the chaos of abandonment. It is leadership that adapts, giving more freedom as competence grows. From here emerges the collaborative transition strategy. Leadership evolves into teamwork not because the man lost power, but because both gained it. The roles shift naturally. In financial matters, perhaps he leads. In social matters, perhaps she does. Strengths dictate leadership, not titles. At its highest form, the model produces what I call the mutual respect equilibrium. Here the hierarchy dissolves. Neither needs to demand authority because respect flows freely in both directions. Leadership becomes fluid, rotating like dance partners, each taking the lead when the moment calls for it. Psychologically, this evolution is profound. It means that the strongest leaders are those unafraid to eventually let go. They understand that leadership is not a cage they must guard jealously, but a bridge they build together. Weak men fear losing control. Strong men know that sharing control creates deeper trust. This is why some relationships grow stronger with time, while others collapse. Couples who adapt, who evolve toward partnership, thrive. Those who cling to rigid hierarchies where one must always dominate wither under the pressure of changing realities. And so the final truth emerges. The death of traditional authority is not a tragedy, it is an opportunity. The world no longer rewards men for being born male. It rewards men for being competent, authentic, emotionally intelligent, and courageous enough to lead without chains and to partner without fear. In this new reality, leadership is not about domination, it is about elevation. A man proves his value not by suppressing his partner, but by lifting her higher, knowing she will lift him too. Together they do not recreate the brittle pyramids of the past, but build resilient partnerships capable of withstanding the storms of the present. And so, if you recognize yourself in these struggles, if you've ever wondered why the old ways no longer work, understand this: the rules have changed. The shield of tradition is gone. The position authority fallacy is exposed. What remains is the competence imperative, the authenticity filter, the command, wisdom principle, and the hearts and minds strategy. These are not obstacles, they are tools. They are the new weapons of leadership in a world where respect is not inherited but earned. Because in the end, being a man is no longer enough, but being a man who adds value through competence, wisdom, and care has never been more powerful. The collapse of old authority is not the end of leadership. It is the beginning of a higher form of it, one where hearts follow because they want to and minds align because it makes sense, one where leaders are not born but forged. And for those willing to rise to this challenge, the reward is clear. Relationships richer than obedience, partnerships deeper than hierarchy, and respect stronger than fear. The old game is over, the new one has begun, and it is a game worth playing.